pretty interested in the company you're currently working. Is there a chance for me to have a coffee chat or random chat with you in terms of knowing more about your experience over there?
Yeah.
One of the most important criteria that the interviewers are looking for is around the question whether this person is someone I want to work with in the future.
Hey guys, it's Hasuu here. So we are back, and today I invited one of my friends who is now the data scientist in LinkedIn. And yeah, I invited him to share some of his experiences, how he got this job, and especially as an international student, you know, the competition is so fierce. Let's welcome.
Hey guys, nice to see you.
This is Jay, and some may know that he came to United States as an international student in CMU. And at first he got an internship at LinkedIn, and after that he's now a full-time data scientist in this company. Let's welcome.
Nice to see everyone.
You can begin by introducing yourself.
I might start with my experience when I first came to the United States. I came to the States in August 2019.
Oh, just 3 years ago.
Yeah, I'm hitting my 3-year anniversary in this country. So I came here 3 years ago, and so back then CMU, the graduate program I attended at CMU was like a 16-month program, and I started looking for internship. I think it's around November 2019, so 3 months after I came to the States. Our program was designed in a way that you need to do a summer internship in 2020, so like 1 year after you started the program. And it's basically self-serve, like you have to look for the internship by yourself in most cases. So I think...
What if you didn't get the internship?
So there are corner cases where you didn't find an internship eventually. In that case, you can try to like contact some of the professors or instructors in your college. They might have some summer programs or projects for it to work on, so that counts as internship as well. But in most cases, people just look for internships in the other companies because they want to, like, for most people who came to the United States for their graduate study, their ultimate goal was to stay here with a job. So it would be ideal if you can find an internship somewhere outside of a college. And it was competitive, so people were pretty like anxious or eager to find an internship. So I think as far as I can remember, so some of my peers already started looking for an internship before they came to the States.
Oh gosh, like once they received their offer, they began to look for internship.
Yeah, so I think some of the first steps they do was to like reach out to people on LinkedIn or some other social media platform, or you can try to contact some of the alumni from your graduate program and try to see if there's a chance for them to find an internship in a company, either where the alumni works for, or some random people on LinkedIn, whether their companies have internships or something. So the networking process started pretty early. Some people even started before they came to the States. I think my timeline was like, so there was a career fair in October 2019. Basically, a lot of companies came to Carnegie Mellon and offer, like, they were in a stadium and there were different booths. People can just attend any of them, give them their resumes, have some side talk regarding their past experiences. So people there, like the representatives of the companies are typically HR, recruiters. They will collect your resumes, and then if there are any internship openings in the next couple of weeks, you'll be informed. And probably there's a higher chance for you to get an interview if you attended the session and meet them in person. So that's different from for example, you directly submit an online application because you don't have the chance to meet those recruiters and company representatives in person. So career fair is one of the major source of your internship.
Do you get your internship obtained because of that?
No.
Or you just like submit that online?
So my process was like, I started to reach out to people on LinkedIn near October, and like over 1 and 2 months of time, I started to get some responses. So I typically start with something like, I would search for people who either had the same college experience with me or same graduate school experience with me, namely alumni. So you guys have some shared backgrounds. It will be easier to start a conversation with them. Typically by saying, hey, for example, I'm Jay, and I am currently a graduate student at Carnegie Mellon, blah blah program, and I found that you were from that program as well. And also, you started by saying, I'm pretty interested in the company you're currently working. Is there a chance for me to have a coffee chat or random chat with you in terms of knowing more about your experience over there? So this is how it started, like a networking conversation with the people you don't know. And if that connection was made, so they responded to you and proposed some time for you to chat, then you could start preparing some questions for them, and at the end of the conversation, potentially ask for a referral, so that they could pass your resume to the hiring managers of their companies, which would save a lot of time, because if you submit an online application, it will typically go through a multiple screening process, and there's a chance for it to get dropped in any of them. But if you could find someone within their company and they give you a referral, you typically would skip all those pre-screening processes.
And have a higher chance to get it.
Yes, typically we have a higher chance of getting the resume directly to the people who are hiring that intern or full-time employee, so the chance will be higher.
As well as the interview, like they will schedule a time to talk to you.
Yes. So the way I did was, I reached out to a lot of alumni in different companies. LinkedIn is one of them, and I also reached out to Airbnb employees, Adobe, all those big name techs. And so LinkedIn alumni tended to be the most responsive. I got 3 of them responding to my email and saying, hey, we can have a chat, or even someone is directly saying, hey, I can give you a referral. So I gave my resume to one of them, and so the process was pretty smooth. I got reached out by the recruiter at LinkedIn saying, hey, we are currently recruiting summer interns for 2020, and we can schedule you for the next rounds of interview, something like that. So that's how it started. So it started from networking with people. So typically I would recommend both ways. So like if your graduate program or school has some career fair,
definitely go
for it, and prepare your resume and like the talk with them in advance, so that when you give the resume to them, you have something to introduce about yourself, or even like sell yourself. And at the same time, never stop reaching out to people via those social media. LinkedIn is a great place for you to find people who work at the company you want to work for. So I would recommend going both ways. I think it's pretty important for international students, because if you came to the States without any formal background or connections here, it's it's very critical for to start building your network and connections.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially starting with people who share a same educational background with you. That's the easiest path. So yeah, that's the you need to go to both directions in terms of finding an internship.
That's a lesson learned. I never thought about I have connected with several persons, but not so much. Yeah, that's a very good way, sounds like. First you got a referral and you reached by the recruiter, then you schedule an interview. Do you remember how many rounds you've been through?
Every company has a different process of interviews. So some companies has 6 rounds, some companies only have 1 or 2 rounds.
Wow.
Speaking of LinkedIn has in terms of intern recruiting, LinkedIn has 4 rounds of interviews. So the first round starts with a talk with the recruiter. It's basically covering some questions around the resume, basically introducing one of the internships previously, or tell me something about your educational experience. So those are some random talks, basically behavioral questions. I think it's basically just testing your communication skills or capability. If you're able to communicate very smoothly in English. And after that, there will be 2 back-to-back interviews. So the two interviews happen on the same day, and typically happen consecutively, right? Next to each other. So
After this, then you started immediately.
Yes, because typically people working in large companies are their schedule is pretty packed. They have a lot of meetings to attend. So the one way to do this, to do the recruiting more efficiently, is that the recruiter will try to put your interview slot with multiple interviews on the same day.
Yeah.
So that you go through all the interviews and you will be notified of a result. In case any of the rounds you fail at any of the rounds, you will be failing the entire interview. It's actually a way to save both your and the recruiting team's time. So for internship, I had two back-to-back interviews. Both of them are technical. So one of the technical interviews around testing your data manipulation and analysis skills. It's basically testing your SQL and Python coding. Typically, they throw out a question, like a framed question, and asking you to derive a result table they want to see using SQL or Python. So that's typical for data science or data analytics interviews. And
they will monitor you through the whole process, when you're
yes,
how you answer this question. Yeah.
That's right. So I think before COVID, it's typical that they would book a flight for you.
Wow.
To come to the site. For example, if I'm interviewing LinkedIn, I will be given a flight and even hotel to fly to the Bay Area.
California, okay.
And then I will be scheduled to visit the office on the interview day. So typically it's a face-to-face interview with a real person. And
so nice.
you also got a chance to have a lunch with them, with the interviewers, knowing about the company's culture. But
you're during the COVID time, right?
Yes.
2020.
That's right. So the interview happens within the COVID when the COVID
just started.
Began. And the entire interviewing process was actually remote. So the way it works is the recruiter will send a Zoom link to you, and at the scheduled time, both you and the interviewer will appear in the Zoom meeting room. And the way that they are doing code interview nowadays is there's an online code pad, like a web page.
Yeah, I've been given that link too.
And it's like a shared doc.
Okay.
Basically, either
coding, they can monitor.
Yes. Either your typing or the interviewer's typing will be visible to everyone.
Wow.
So that's how they use it. And typically, the interviewer will paste the questions and descriptions into the code pad first, and you are asked to start
coding immediately.
Coding and try to answer the question there.
How many times like how much time you were offered to answer one question, or is like you need to answer a whole question in 1 hour or something?
This actually differ company by company, but for
LinkedIn
it's like a 45-minute coding session, and typically consists of 2 questions.
Oh.
Yeah, so your ability to answer the question in time is also something they're looking for. For example, you're supposed to answer 2 questions, but if you spend like 30 minutes on the first question, you don't have enough time for the second question. That's like a red flag for your like timing and the ability to answer the question smoothly.
What if like you answer the question in time, but there's some like several mistakes in your procedure?
That would depend on the criteria or standards. So if some of them are like really minor mistakes, I think typically the interviewers will give it a pass. That happens to me as an interviewer as well, because I've already worked at LinkedIn for like over a year, and I've also given a couple of interviews already. So essentially there are some set standards and rules there saying, hey, this is a major mistake. Like mistake like this is a major mistake you don't want to see. And if the candidate makes that mistake, it's a fail.
red flag.
It's a fail. And some minor mistakes like typo or basically if it's another round, you understanding the question incorrectly, that will be considered like a minor mistake.
Okay.
So as long as you're able to give the right answer in the end, and the process makes sense to the interviewer, it's typically a pass.
So there are 2 rounds of kind of this.
Yes, so the first round, as I mentioned, is like testing your coding capability of SQL and Python, like if you're looking for a data science job.
Yeah.
The second round is like a case interview, a technical case interview. So it's really around your ability to communicate your hypothesis around an observed problem and how you formulate your either exploration or analysis approach. So, for example, let's say the question I give you is that, so typically in the data science world, we have especially for the social media, we have a metric called weekly active user.
Oh yeah.
So it basically measures how many users are active on this platform or social media every week, and it's an indicator of like the platform's growth.
Right.
So a typical question in the case interview round is something like LinkedIn's weekly active user, which is WAU.
Yeah.
So LinkedIn's WAU dropped by, let's say, 5% this week, as opposed to last week. What is the cause, or what could be the reason? So this is a typical like case interview. The way you want to do it is to break down the 5% drop, like either by, for example, desktop versus mobile devices.
Right.
So if most of the weakness or drop comes from mobile devices, then that's something you have to further dig into. So it's typical answering questions like this. It's pretty open-ended. It doesn't have a standard answer.
Yeah.
So as long as your thinking process and
How
your
many
communication.
times you were given to think about this? Or just they propose a question, then you will answer immediately?
So you can take as long as you want to think about this. It's also a 45-minute session, but it only has one question like this. So I think a general rule of thumb is like think about it for 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, or even less than 5 minutes, and then I think you really want to start with some clarifying questions. Like the question I gave just now was already pretty well structured, but typically interviewers will give you something like LinkedIn's WAU dropped by 5%. What is the cause? So this question is more vague and less specific.
Right.
But you really want to know, okay, when we talk about the 5% drop, what are we benchmarking on? So is it is it the case that this week's WU is 5% less than last week, or is this week's WU less than dropped by 5% compared to the same week last year? So the time frame, like the specific comparison happening under the hood, is something you need to figure out by asking clarifying questions. Otherwise, the question itself is very vague.
Right.
And the interviewer is actually expecting this kind of question. So,
should you like propose that question at the beginning of your thinking or after the 5 minutes? Like upon hearing this question, will you like ask this specific or clarifying question, or should you like think for after 5 minutes and then ask them about that?
I think if you think about it for 5 minutes and then ask, it will be too late.
Right.
So,
but it's still like very weird. Like if you, upon hearing this question, then you ask, "May I ask you some clarifying questions?" Oh, that sounds fine to me.
I think the recommendation is you start asking clarifying questions right after you got the question itself.
Okay.
So it's totally fine that your thinking was not that comprehensive, but you really start the communication from the very beginning, because I think one of the most important criteria that the interviewers are looking for is around the question whether this person is someone I want to work with in the future.
Okay.
So it's pretty within the context of working with a colleague.
Okay.
So put yourself in a hypothetical case or situation that the interviewer you're facing is your colleague or someone you will be working with in the future. How would you communicate and tackle the problem with him together? So this is something you're looking for. If you're just working silos, for example, you're just drawing, writing on your own without asking any questions or without communicating any of your thoughts, this will be a red flag.
Right.
Because
they want you to communicate with them, especially if you got admitted.
Yes, typically like the working environment nowadays is pretty collaborative. In most cases, you need to communicate and work together with other people on the same project or problem. So communication is pretty important.
Right.
This is not like a standard, but this really is something that interviewers are looking for, which is based on this 40-minute conversation with this person, is him or her the person I would like to work with in the future?
Yeah, that's a good point. So some may just want to someone may think I need to answer this question in a very perfect way, so they just keep writing and don't talk to the others.
That's something you need to avoid.
Right.
And I think in some cases this could be a typical habit for some Chinese students.
They may be afraid of talking or communicating with
Yes,
others with questions.
I think one of the fears, or my previous fears, was that I was not able to answer the question perfectly, or I'm afraid of asking stupid questions.
Yeah,
So-
you may wonder will they think it's so easy or so a bit silly if I ask them this?
Right. You need to get rid of the mindset. So they wouldn't be expecting perfect answers or perfect questions, but you really need to start communicating. And
So after this, the first is the interview with the HR, and the second round is the coding, and the third round is the case problem. So what about the final round, where you talk to your manager?
yes,
The final
round is basically talking with the manager. So this manager could either be the person who is hiring the employee for his or her own team,
Yeah.
or someone you wouldn't be working with in the future. You don't know.
Okay.
But typically it's a manager, or even someone whose level is higher than manager. And what they are typically looking for in this round is